Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Barbecue Stories. My fiancée Jill had always been overly close with her best friend, Arthur. Just days before our wedding, she had her bachelorette party, and guess who made an appearance? Arthur. I knew Jill had invited him, but I never expected that this party would end up destroying our relationship. My name is Michael, and I'm 26 years old. Our wedding with Jill was the most anticipated event in our relationship. We spent months meticulously planning each detail so that everything would be just right. It felt like we were made for each other since high school. We shared the same hobbies, goals, values, ethics, and so much more. Our relationship was built on trust. Both of us held honesty in high regard and expected fidelity from one another. But soon, everything we had worked so hard for crumbled like fragile glass. Even though our relationship was grounded in trust, there was one person who always made me uneasy: Arthur, Jill's best friend. They had been inseparable since childhood, growing up in the same neighborhood and attending the same school. Their families were close friends too. When Jill and I started dating, nothing about her interactions with Arthur changed. They could chat for hours about anything and everything over the phone and hang out together during their free time. I knew Arthur often dropped by Jill's place unannounced and would stay for hours. While I could understand why they were so attached to one another, their closeness always rubbed me the wrong way. At first, I tried to downplay my unease, deliberately ignoring it. I worked hard to trust Jill and respect her friendship with Arthur, but that nagging feeling inside me only grew stronger with time. Occasionally, it even sparked disagreements between us. I had tried to have honest conversations with Jill about how much time she spent alone with Arthur, but she always dismissed my concerns. When I told her it made me uncomfortable, Jill insisted I was exaggerating. She reassured me repeatedly that they were just childhood friends and that there was no reason for me to feel jealous. I tried to explain that my issue wasn't solely about jealousy. I was more bothered by how emotionally intimate their relationship seemed. It felt as if Arthur was occupying a space in her life that should belong to me as her partner. However, every time we discussed this, Jill would tell me I was misinterpreting everything. She assured me that I was the most important person in her life, even more so than Arthur. After these conversations, I'd attempt to trust her again and suppress my jealousy. It's worth mentioning that aside from her bond with Arthur, Jill had never given me any other reason to doubt her. She always treated me with love and care. She constantly expressed her feelings for me and her happiness in being with me. Jill invested a lot of energy into our relationship, surprising me with thoughtful gestures, assisting me with tasks, checking on me, and offering support whenever I faced challenges. When work became overwhelming, Jill would spoil me with dinners every evening, lifting my spirits. We spent entire weekends together and frequently traveled. Jill would shower me with compliments, praising both my character and appearance. She often told her friends how fortunate she felt to have met such a reliable and caring partner. As you can see, Jill never gave me any reason to believe she had feelings for someone else or was seeking out other relationships. I had trusted her completely throughout the years until the fateful betrayal at her bachelorette party. How naive I had been. The incident took place just 2 days before our wedding, during Jill's bachelorette party. Although these events are traditionally for women only, Jill had invited Arthur, the only man in a crowd of women. I couldn't comprehend why a guy, especially Arthur, had to be at the bachelorette party. Jill tried to justify it by saying I could invite any of my female friends to my bachelor party. The problem was, I didn't have any close female friends like she had Arthur. The only woman I got along with well was Molly, a mutual friend who was also invited to Jill's bachelorette. I didn't want to embarrass her by inviting her to my bachelor party and force her to choose between us, so my bachelor party ended up being all guys. Despite Jill's permission to invite anyone I liked, I remained irritated by Arthur's presence at her party. Even though I tried to trust their friendship, my lingering feelings of jealousy and discomfort wouldn't go away. Still, for the sake of keeping a peaceful pre-wedding atmosphere, I kept quiet. In those days, Jill and I were focused on the final preparations for the wedding, choosing decorations, organizing entertainment for the guests. I wanted to make sure the wedding was perfect. So despite Arthur being around Jill, I tried to set aside my discomfort. I hoped that Jill would sense my unease and show some respect by postponing her meetings with him until after the wedding. But, unfortunately, Jill didn't seem to feel the same. She did nothing to protect our relationship's peace. Yes, you guessed right. She cheated on me with Arthur at her own bachelorette party, no less. The very party where she had assured me there was nothing to worry about. During the party, I received an unexpected photo from an unknown number. The image showed my fiancé in a passionate kiss with Arthur in a swimming pool. It was obvious they were both undressed. From the image, it was clear that something intimate had happened between them. When I first saw the photo, I wanted to believe it was a cruel prank or a photoshopped image. But deep down, I immediately knew the truth. Their pose was too revealing, leaving no doubt. That picture shattered every illusion I had about Jill's loyalty and love for me. I realized all her declarations of love were lies. I was furious. Imagine discovering your fiancé, naked, embracing another naked man just days before your wedding. Jill's actions triggered a whirlwind of emotions in me. Confusion, rage, pain, and betrayal all at once. My thoughts raced with questions. How could she do this? How long had this been going on? Did she ever truly love me? I was completely lost, desperate for answers. The sender of the photo remained anonymous, and when I texted back to ask who they were, there was no response. I had to figure out the truth on my own. Jill's betrayal was a massive blow to my trust. I also knew that confronting her would only lead to a heated argument filled with justifications and lies. Nobody kisses their best friend in such an intimate setting if it's innocent. Refusing to be a victim of such disrespect, I spent that entire night plotting my revenge. I knew I needed someone else involved in my plan, someone from my circle who would be willing to help me carry out this plot on our wedding day, and I found that person. Finally, the wedding day arrived, the day that should have been full of love and promises. As we stood at the altar, preparing to exchange vows, I stunned the crowd by asking them to turn their attention to the large screen behind us. Projected on the white backdrop was the very photo of Jill and Arthur. The crowd gasped in shock. I watched the faces of our guests as they processed what was happening. Jill, on the other hand, looked like she had seen a ghost. First, she was confused, but then the horror of the situation hit her. She desperately tried to explain herself to the guests, but no one was listening. I won't lie, seeing her heartbreak was much harder than I had anticipated. I thought it would bring me satisfaction, but instead, I felt an overwhelming emptiness. Everything around me seemed to blur. I saw the shocked faces of my relatives, Arthur trying to justify himself, and the sympathy in my parents' eyes. But what did I feel? Nothing. I quietly left the venue, got into my car, and drove away, my wedding car still adorned with white ribbons. I spent that night alone in a hotel room, drowning in alcohol and ignoring all phone calls. For a brief moment, I felt some relief. After the wedding disaster, Jill tried to reach out to me endlessly. She called, left voicemails, and sent me letters filled with apologies and explanations. She claimed the kiss with Arthur was harmless, that she had simply been drunk and lost control. She begged for forgiveness and pleaded with me to give her another chance. But I ignored every attempt. I didn't want to hear excuses or apologies after such a massive betrayal. Her actions were too painful for me to even consider reconciliation. After the breakup, it was incredibly difficult for me to recover from Jill's betrayal and infidelity. I struggled to trust others and sank into depression. But over time, Molly, our mutual friend, began helping me through this rough patch. As it turned out, Molly was the one who had anonymously sent me the photo from the bachelorette party. She had done it because she didn't want me to marry someone who was unfaithful to me. In what might seem surprising, it was Molly who gradually helped me rediscover my love for life. Eventually, we started dating. I came to realize that Molly had been my true guardian angel all along, there for me when I needed support the most. As for Jill, she had to move in with her parents in another city. Nearly all of our friends turned their backs on her after the wedding incident, and even her relatives struggled to offer her support. While I still maintain a good relationship with her family, they offered me their sincerest condolences for what I had endured. In the end, it seems karma caught up to Jill, and she's now dealing with the consequences of her actions, trying to rebuild her reputation. Dear listener, if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing for more stories.